A common theme throughout history is to try and forget who really started the world that we live in today, such as women, people of color, any type of ethnicity that isn't white. We live in a whitewashed America, and today I'm going to discuss someone who changed feminism on a whole new level and brought a new generation of women empowerment to this country. Her name is Nellie Bly. Nellie Bly began her career when she was around between 16 and 18 years old. She had already gone through a suffrage of emotional abuse just based solely on her gender. She was rejected to go to school and work just because she was a female. Through her career, she made sure to shed light onto what was important on how women help create the country that we live in and how we are just as worthy as any man has ever been. She brings light on the power of how sexism has brought on to today. She also helped create the movement for the women's rights movement, and she also brought the attention to the mistreatment between everybody that is not considered, or that is not a straight white male within our society. How she was first sought after was when she submitted an anonymous letter to the Dispatch, an old newspaper company. They talked about how women belong in a household and how they're supposed to treat and praise their husbands, which triggered Nellie Bly after all the emotional abuse, as I said earlier, that she went through. And she decided that even though she wasn't a big reader or writer, she decided to put that away and just pour her heart out and give an anonymous letter to the Dispatch. And she signed it, The Lonely Orphan Girl. This made a big recognition of who this girl was, and the creators of the Dispatch decided that they needed that. They needed this new light and this new perspective on what was going on for a female and how it was like to live in their society of that day. And they were able to track her down, find her, and bring her in as a columnist for the newspaper. Nellie took her position a little too far. She decided to declare herself an investigative reporter, which, although she was, the Dispatch decided they did not want to call her that because she was a woman. And instead, they decided to just keep her as a society columnist, which is for the women's pages. And the women's pages is basically articles about cleaning and cooking and everything that you would expect a woman to take care of, especially back in the day. Nellie was not okay with that. She was upset, and she knew that her value and worth and potential of what she could do was not being brought up or reached to any extent. And so she decided to leave. She quit her job in protest and decided to go looking in New York for a more open-minded company that would let her experience the world outside of just the fact that she was a woman. She was hired eventually at Joseph Pulitzer's New York World. This is when she was able to really bring light to what was going on behind the door in America and how people were actually being treated. And the newspaper loved it, and they kept her going and pushing her and let her flourish how she should have at the Dispatch. She did a bunch of things. The most common one, the first thing that I learned, was she went undercover as a mental patient in an asylum. And back then, they didn't have cell phones or computers or anything like that, so she only had her memory to use. And she was able to take what she experienced and write it down and share to the world how mental patients were being treated and abused and starved and tortured. This made the asylum very upset, but gave a new perspective as to what's actually happening and how people are actually being taken care of. After writing multiple articles and giving a new light of honesty to writing, she earned a permanent position at the New York World, and she was finally actually starting to break gender stereotypes and gender norms. The thing that actually brought her into being a common household name was her breaking the record for traveling around the world in 72 days. And what inspired her was the famous book Around the World in 80 Days. When she regained that fame of her trip, she decided to take advantage of it and go even deeper into topics that normally weren't discussed on what was going on in society. She covered a number of national news stories. She interviewed women, and especially for the women's rights movement. She looked into factory workers and how they were being mistreated. She went everywhere, bringing attention to things that people normally didn't think of and didn't pay close enough attention to, thinking, I'm not a part of that life, I shouldn't be a part of it, based off of their social class or gender or race. And she decided that wasn't okay, and she needed to break down that barrier, which is exactly what she did. It's important for you to get from this speech how, despite the obstacles that she went through, she decided to keep pushing and to fight her way in order to get to what she believed would be equal rights for women in the workplace. She included suffrage in her articles, as I was explaining, to show that there really are people struggling. And it's not just women, immigrants, it's everybody. Anybody can be struggling, and that they need to be able to be helped rather than judged. She also clearly shed light on how we are just as worthy as men, and we can conquer just as much as they can, and that we are equal. She is the one who decided enough was enough, and to bring attention to how important it was that we are treated equally and that we do not belong where they claim that we belong, or that we can't do the job as well as men. She continued her writings until the day that she passed, and until then she kept up with what was going on in the world and kept shedding light on every issue that she could to make sure that everybody had equal rights, equal opportunities, and a chance to become who they truly could based off their potential and what they wanted to do, not based off of anything that is on their race, gender, etc., just solely based on if that's what they wanted, they should go for it.